Welcome to this installment of Techniques for the Win. With this series here, I try to encompass the rating range of about 1,000 to 1,800, sometimes up to 2,000, but also I want to make this accessible to rating ranges, around 500 or so, just the same. So if you're in that rating range, you might want to watch this video. So with that said, the topics that we're going to cover in this video is, first of all, optimal bishop positioning, controlling the square, how to take advantage of a color complex, and initiate forced moves that would be advantageous to you. Now, if you look at the current position on hand, this here is an absolute draw. There's nothing black can do to stop white just from shuffling his king back and forth like so. And once it happens, if you look at the squares that's highlighted in blue, these squares are almost always had an opposition held by white. Black can't move his king to the other side of the board where the lone white pawn is at, because he would lose the game with the two pawns on the that's with the white king, and his bishop can never attack anything of use. However, my opponent, instead of playing g4, my opponent actually played h6 check, and this loses the game. However, you still have to know how to win such a game. So there's 4 possible moves here as black, and you want to pause the video and pick which one you want to play. But I'll just go ahead and say this here is that either one of them wins the game. It's just that one or two of them just requires you to play a little bit more of a finesse than just playing the more straightforward way. And I think personally, the most straightforward way to play this position is just to go to king to h7, because now what option does white has? Well, if you step away from the pawn, you're just going to take a pawn with the bishop. So he can't step away from the pawns, because that's automatically a loss, right? So we know he's tied to these two pawns. So he has to go king to g4, king to f4, or king to f6. In this case, any other move just loses faster. All of them lose, but anything else loses faster than that. So my opponent in this position goes king to f6. Now, what I will say is this. Now, pause the video and think about, or I'll say this first before I ask you to pause the video. Think about what move would you play right here, and what would be your end goal of utilizing that move. Now, if you said you want to go bishop to, now I'll ask you to pause the video. Now, if you say you want to go to bishop to c3 check, actually, this is not a loss. You're still winning. It just takes a little bit longer to win this way, because it looks very nice that, say, for example, if the king steps away from the pawn, you're like, oh my God, I got this square here that I can go to, this juicy king to g6. But however, this is still winning. But it just, white doesn't have to do that move, right? So now let's go back. He goes check. King goes to the most obvious move that king is going to do is probably for humans anyway. It's going to go king to f7. Now you may be wondering how to continue to win this game. Now, you'd be surprised to know that you could actually lose this game in this position if you played the wrong move. You say, okay, he got 2 pawns on black. I have a black bishop. The most obvious thing to do is attack the pawns, but as soon as you attack those pawns, game over for black, because the push comes, check. Doesn't matter what white does. If he takes the pawn, you push, and nothing can stop this pawn on g7 from queening, because the last black square that was available for the black bishop to attack is being occupied by the pawn. So that means on the very next move, white is going to get a queen. Let's just say, for example, if he goes here, white just gets a queen, just that simple, and that loses the game for black. Now, The technique you want to do in this position here, you want to control this color complex and figure out what is the most optimal place to put the bishop. Now, and once you do that, that's when you'll get those forced moves you want that make you win the game. Now, the most actually the most reasonable move here actually is you want to stay on this diagonal here, and there's a trick why you want to stay on this diagonal here. You could go bishop to b2. I've researched this with a computer, but but in my mind, from a human standpoint, bishop to e5 just looks a little bit more human to me. Now black may step back. Now watch this. Now in this case, you might say, oh, I can now got this juicy g6 square for my king. But as soon as you step up, guess what? This here is a draw. Because you just step back now with the king and attack the pawn. If black comes over, you just step your king up. And, well, there's just nothing you can do because, like, even if black does not take this, let's just get this out of the way. If he takes the pawn, you just push and get a queen. Black has a take, king takes, and this is just a draw. But let's just say if that does not happen, and let's just say king goes back to h7. Well, you just keep hovering right here because eventually, if the black king ever takes this pawn, or if the bishop takes this pawn on g5, black is going to lose his b4 pawn. It's just that simple in any case. So let's just say if he goes here, you go here. Let's just imagine. I'm just doing this for the sake of illustration, just to show you. And you just take here, and well, there you have it. That's just another draw, just like that. All right. So now, since that is not what we want to do, if we go back here, and now your bishop, don't forget, you don't want that juicy g6 square for the king. So what would you play here? Now, this is a really, really, really good bishop finesse of how you would win this game. Now, you remember a while ago, if you attack the pawns with your bishop, white would win the game, but that was because white was on f6. But now when you attack these pawns, you force white to go back. Now, why is this significant? This is a totally different position that may not seem like it is just one square is different. And you force black to go back to their pawn. It doesn't matter if he went to f4, f6. It really doesn't matter. And you see why here in a second. But again, f6 makes the most sense in cases for some reason if your opponent makes a mistake and you can keep pushing your pawn down to g8 if he allows you to do so. Now, the difference is this. Is that now you have this bishop finesse to, you can go now to b6. This is the finesse right here, because really what you want, technically, now from this point, it might be a little bit easier to see, but what you really want is the bishop to come to this diagonal, but also, sorry, that's a knight move. Oops, give me a second here. But you also want it to be able to come up this way, but also if it needs to be able to also protect this pawn. So really, ideally, this square here on e7 is like the ideal square for the bishop. Now what can black do here? Now, let's just say in this case, if black was to push the pawn and you step up and he pushed the pawn, the difference now is that you have this check here and you can take that pawn. But hold up, let's go back just one quick second here for a second. What happens if white goes here and you come back to say b6? Okay, you push, come here. As you can see, he cannot push the pawn because you just simply take. And if he step his king down, then there you have that same check again. If you step this, come down with his king again, well, guess what? You put your bishop here, and he has to step away from the pawn. And just like that, you secure your pawn, win his pawns, and win the game. So then let's go back one more time and step through this here. So think about it. The idea of getting the king into a position, with a white king into a position where he can't walk his pawn forward, but also so he can attack your bishop, but be close enough to your pawn. So here, don't forget, he's 1, 2, 3, 4 moves from taking a pawn. But earlier in the line, if he was already on let's just say if he was on let's just go back here. Let's just say if you was here, and let me just make a move here. You just done this here and stepped up. Now, when he attacks your, now because he's, let's go back for a second. Now he's only 1, 2, 3 moves from the pawn. Now when he steps back, he's in time now to stop any kind of capture of either one of these pawns, because he's now threatening your pawn. So anyway, I hope you guys really enjoyed this quick lesson here on how to get optimal bishop positioning, controlling a particular square. And we saw how we easily took advantage of that black color complex, and we ultimately forced white to make a very undesirable move. And white just simply lost the game.